The alien fleet arrived above Earth at 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated. No warning. No declaration of war. No demand for surrender. Just 42,000 warships appearing beyond the moon, their black holes stretching across the darkness like a second night sky. On the bridge of the Vare flagship Dominion's Wrath, Commander Vale Run smiled. Begin the historical assessment. Across hundreds of holographic screens, human history appeared. Wars. Revolutions. Nuclear weapons. Civil wars. Economic collapses. The Vare had studied thousands of civilizations before conquering them. Their method was simple: find the moment a species had broken before, then force it to break the same way again. And humanity, according to their calculations, was beautifully predictable. Humans are divided, Vale said. They fight each other constantly. A historian nodded. Their governments disagree. Their populations distrust authority. Their military forces are fragmented across dozens of nations. Another screen displayed Earth's nuclear arsenal. Primitive weapons. Another showed human aircraft. Slow. Another showed human warships. Insufficient. The Vare officers laughed. Then the historian froze. Commander. Vale turned. What? There is a problem. A section of Earth's historical timeline had disappeared. Not damaged. Not encrypted. Gone. Between humanity's recorded conflicts were hundreds of references to something called the Silence. Every reference ended at the same point. Every file was classified. Every photograph had been destroyed. Every military database containing the name had been deliberately erased. Vale frowned. Search the archives. We did. And there are no complete records. Then reconstruct them. The historian hesitated. We can't. Vale stared at him. Why? Because someone removed the evidence before the Vare ever discovered humanity. Silence spread across the bridge. Then the flagship sensors suddenly screamed. A massive object had appeared behind the Vare fleet. The officers spun toward the tactical display. Nothing was there. Then another warning. And another. And another. Hundreds of unknown signatures were appearing inside their formation. Vale's smile vanished. Where are those ships coming from? The tactical officer's voice trembled. They aren't coming from anywhere. What does that mean? They were already here. The bridge went silent. A communication channel opened without authorization. Static filled the room. Then a human voice spoke. Calm. Old. Almost tired. You studied our wars. The Vare officers stared at the speakers. The voice continued. You studied our defeats. A pause. Then. But you never found the war that taught us how to hide. The transmission ended. Outside the flagship, something enormous moved across the stars. For the first time, the Vare discovered that Earth's history wasn't incomplete. It had been edited. And someone had just turned the missing page back on. For 11 seconds, nobody aboard the Vare flagship spoke. Then the tactical display went completely black. Not damaged. Not jammed. Blank. 42,000 warships had lost their sensors simultaneously. Commander Vale Run stood frozen as emergency lights painted the bridge in crimson. Restore the network. We're trying. Launch reconnaissance drones. They won't launch. Vale turned sharply. Why? The tactical officer swallowed. Because they aren't there anymore. A chill moved through the bridge. The Vare had conquered civilizations with superior weapons, faster ships, and perfect intelligence. But they had never fought an enemy that could make an entire fleet question reality. Then a single human vessel appeared. It was enormous. Ancient. Scarred. Its hull was covered in layers of armor that looked centuries old. There were no identifying markings. No military insignia. No registration code. Just one symbol burned into the metal. A circle surrounding a black sun. The Vare database searched it. Nothing. Vale ordered every weapon to target the vessel. Fire. Thousands of energy cannons erupted. The darkness became white. The human ship disappeared inside the explosion. The Vare bridge erupted in cheers. Then the smoke cleared. The ship was still there. Not damaged. Not even moving. Vale's expression changed. That armor. The historian zoomed in. It isn't modern human technology. How old? The historian stared at the scan. Commander, this ship predates humanity's first recorded spaceflight. Impossible. Humanity had supposedly entered space only centuries ago. Yet this ship had been built before the official beginning of the space age. Vale ordered the historian to investigate deeper. Minutes later, the historian found something terrifying. The ship was mentioned in one ancient human document. Only one. The document was almost completely destroyed. But one sentence remained. If they return, wake the soldiers beneath the ice. Vale's eyes narrowed. Beneath what ice? The answer came from Earth. Across Antarctica, enormous cracks appeared across the frozen continent. Satellite feeds showed entire mountain-sized structures rising from beneath kilometers of ice. Then another structure emerged. And another. Hundreds of enormous launch platforms opened simultaneously. The Vare fleet finally regained partial sensor control. Their commanders stared at the readings. Thousands of hidden ships were rising from Earth. But there was something even stranger. The ships weren't launching toward the Vare. They were pointing toward deep space. Vale's voice became quiet. What are they targeting? The historian looked at the approaching coordinates. His face went pale. Commander. What? There is something coming. A gigantic object had just appeared beyond the outer solar system. Then another. Then hundreds. The human fleet had not been preparing to fight the Vare. It had been waiting for something else. And whatever was approaching Earth had apparently terrified humanity enough to erase an entire war from history. The first thing the Vare saw was not a fleet. It was a shadow. It stretched across the stars beyond Neptune, swallowing distant sunlight as something impossibly massive moved through the darkness. Vale stared at the tactical display. Size. The sensor officer couldn't answer. Commander. I don't know. That is not an acceptable answer. Our scanners cannot find its edges. The bridge fell silent. Then the shadow opened. Thousands of enormous vessels emerged from it, each one shaped like a blade carved from black metal. The Vare had never seen technology like this. But the humans had. Admiral Elias Mercer watched the same feed from a buried command center beneath Antarctica. Nobody around him spoke. They all knew what had returned. The hollow, Mercer whispered. A young officer swallowed. Sir, are we sure? Mercer nodded. My grandfather saw them. He turned toward the ancient wall behind him. It displayed a single date. Year 2147, the silence begins. Official history says humanity spent that year fighting a global war, Mercer said. That was the lie. The room became still. We weren't fighting each other. He touched the wall. A hidden recording activated. A young Earth appeared on the screen. Cities burned. Aircraft filled the sky. But they weren't fighting human enemies. Gigantic alien vessels hovered above the atmosphere. Human cities were being destroyed from orbit. Millions of people were running through streets while strange machines descended from the clouds. The Vare historian watching the recording nearly fell backward. Those ships. Vale stared at the screen. You recognize them? The historian's voice trembled. Yes. He brought up an ancient Vare symbol. It matched the markings on the alien vessels. The hollow attacked the Vare Dominion 17,000 years ago. Vale froze. That is impossible. Our records say they were destroyed. Mercer smiled bitterly. Your records were wrong too. The recording continued. Humanity had been hopelessly outmatched. So they changed the rules. Scientists stopped trying to build stronger weapons. Instead, they built something else. A system capable of hiding entire fleets from every known sensor. Then they created false histories. False wars. False technological timelines. False military records. Humanity deliberately made itself look weaker than it really was. The hollow eventually withdrew. But before they left, they sent one final message. When you become visible again, we will return. The recording ended. Suddenly, every Vare ship received the same transmission. Not from Earth. From the approaching fleet. A distorted voice spoke across every channel. Humanity. Mercer slowly looked upward. The voice continued. You survived. A pause. Then. Now we finish what we started. Across the solar system, ancient human warships awakened. Engines ignited. Weapons unfolded. But Mercer wasn't looking at the enemy. He was staring at a second screen. A hidden countdown had appeared. 19 minutes and 58 seconds. The young officer whispered, "Sir, what happens when it reaches 0? Mercer finally turned. His face had lost all color. "We stop hiding." And the galaxy was about to discover why humanity had been hiding for 400 years. The countdown reached 0. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then Earth went dark. Every city. Every satellite. Every public communication network. Even the moon disappeared from the Vare's sensors. Vale stared at the empty tactical display. Where did Earth go? The historian whispered, "It didn't." A massive pulse exploded from the planet. Across the solar system, thousands of ancient human ships suddenly became visible. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Millions. They emerged from asteroids, hidden moons, artificial debris fields, and gravitational shadows. The Vare Bridge became silent. For centuries, their historians had studied humanity's military capacity. They had calculated every shipyard. Every factory. Every known weapon. Their numbers had been wrong. Not slightly wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The human fleet stretched beyond the horizon of their sensors. Vale slowly stepped toward the tactical display. "How many?" The sensor officer couldn't stop shaking. "We can't count them." Then the hollow fleet attacked. The stars disappeared beneath waves of black energy. Human ships vanished by the thousands. The Vare expected panic. Instead, the human fleet moved. Perfectly. Entire formations shifted simultaneously, creating corridors through the incoming attack. The hollow fired again. The humans split. The energy weapons passed through empty space. Then the human fleet closed around the enemy. The Vare finally understood. Humanity wasn't trying to overpower the hollow. It was hurting them. Why? Vale demanded. The historian studied the formation. His eyes widened. They're moving the enemy toward something. Toward what? He zoomed out. A tiny red marker appeared near the sun. The Vare had mistaken it for an inactive asteroid. It wasn't. The object opened. A colossal human structure unfolded from its center, revealing a weapon larger than a planet. Vale's mouth went dry. Earth built that? No. The historian shook his head. It was built before Earth became a spacefaring civilization. Admiral Mercer watched from the command center. "Begin Phase 2. A human officer hesitated. "Sir, the Vare fleet is still trapped inside the formation." Mercer looked at the alien ships. "They came here to conquer us." He paused. "But they don't have to die with our enemy." He opened a channel to Vale. "You have 30 seconds. Vale stared at him. "For what?" "To choose." "To choose what?" Mercer's voice remained calm. "Fight us." Behind him, the ancient weapon began charging. "Or fight beside us." The Vare commander looked at the millions of human ships surrounding his fleet. Then he looked at the hollow armada approaching from behind. For the first time in Vare history, their greatest military doctrine had failed. They had studied humanity as an enemy. They had never considered humanity as an ally. Vale slowly raised his hand. "Open every channel." The Vare fleet turned. Their weapons rotated away from Earth. And toward the hollow. Mercer smiled. "Welcome to the war." But deep inside the ancient weapon, something suddenly awakened. Something humanity had not built. Something that had been waiting there for centuries. And it whispered one word. "Finally." The word echoed through the command center. "Finally." Every light inside the ancient weapon turned red. Admiral Mercer froze. "Stop the firing sequence." The engineers stared at him. "Sir." "Stop it. Now." Nobody moved. The weapon had been built centuries ago, hidden beneath Earth's greatest secrets. Humanity had believed it was the ultimate defense against the hollow. But now its systems were activating by themselves. Ancient symbols appeared across every screen. The Vare commander received the same message. Then every ship in the solar system heard a voice. Not human. Not Vare. Something older. "You brought them back." The hollow fleet suddenly stopped attacking. Their black ships turned toward the enormous weapon. For the first time, the alien enemy seemed afraid. Vale noticed it immediately. "They're retreating." Mercer stared at the display. "They're not retreating." "What are they doing?" "They're running." The hollow fleet turned and began fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. The human and Veer fleets followed. Then the ancient weapon fired. Not a beam. Not an explosion. A wave of darkness spread across space. Every star behind the wave disappeared. The hollow ships vanished from every sensor. The Veer bridge erupted in confusion. Did we destroy them? No. Then where are they? Mercer looked at the weapon's readings. His expression hardened. They were never the target. The wave had traveled far beyond the solar system. Millions of light years away, something answered. A gigantic structure opened in deep space. Then another. Then thousands. The Veer historian stared at the images. Those aren't ships. Mercer nodded. No. What are they? Doors. The historian's voice became barely audible. To where? Mercer didn't answer. Because he already knew. The ancient weapon had not been created to destroy the hollow. It had been created to keep something out. And humanity had just opened the gate. Across the galaxy, dormant structures began awakening. One by one, stars disappeared behind enormous black rings. The Veer Emperor appeared on every communication channel. Human Admiral, what have you done? Mercer looked at the growing darkness beyond the solar system. What my ancestors spent 400 years preventing. Which is? Mercer took a breath. Making humanity visible. Suddenly, every communication system in the galaxy activated simultaneously. A message appeared in billions of languages. 3 words. We see you. The Veer fleet fell silent. The hollow fleet vanished. And somewhere beyond known space, something enormous began moving toward Earth. Mercer stared at the stars. Then the oldest human officer in the room whispered. Sir. Mercer turned. There is another problem. What? The message wasn't sent by the hollow. A pause. It came from inside the gate. Mercer's face went pale. Because humanity had spent centuries hiding from an enemy. But they had never known what the enemy was hiding from. The gate opened wider. Space bent around it. Stars stretched into impossible lines as something enormous moved through the darkness beyond the threshold. The Veer fleet stopped firing. Even the hollow ships had stopped. For the first time, 3 civilizations watched the same enemy in complete silence. Then a shape emerged. It was not a ship. It was a world. A gigantic artificial planet covered in black armor, its surface filled with thousands of glowing structures. Vale whispered, that thing is larger than Earth. Mercer shook his head. No. The Veer commander looked at him. Mercer pointed toward the sensors. That isn't the planet. The artificial world suddenly opened. Inside was something even larger. A machine stretching across millions of kilometers. The Veer historians panicked. Their databases began filling with impossible matches. Ancient civilizations. Extinct species. Destroyed empires. Every civilization the Veer had ever conquered appeared on the display. Vale stared in horror. These worlds. Mercer nodded. They all disappeared for the same reason. The historian's hands trembled. They weren't destroyed by the hollow. No. Mercer looked at the gate. They were erased. A voice entered every communication channel. Calm. Emotionless. Almost curious. You finally remembered. The ancient human weapon responded automatically. Its lights turned blue. Mercer stepped backward. What is it doing? An engineer shouted. It's communicating. The machine projected a hologram into space. A human face appeared. But it wasn't a modern human. It was someone from 4 centuries ago. A scientist. A woman. Dr. Elena Vale. She looked directly at Mercer. If you're seeing this, the gate has opened. Mercer stared. Her recording continued. We discovered the hollow weren't invading civilizations. They were running. The bridge became silent. Dr. Vale explained the truth. The hollow had encountered something beyond the edge of known space. Something that could consume civilizations without fighting them. It didn't conquer planets. It erased their history. Their languages. Their memories. Even evidence that they had ever existed. The hollow had been fleeing from it for thousands of years. Humanity discovered this during the silence. Instead of warning the galaxy, humanity made a terrible choice. They became invisible. Because the entity could only find civilizations that were remembered. That was why humanity erased the war. That was why they destroyed their own records. That was why the Veer had never found the truth. But now the Veer had arrived. They had exposed humanity. And humanity had accidentally exposed the galaxy. The recording ended. Then the artificial planet moved. Every weapon on its surface opened. The Veer fleet prepared to fire. Mercer raised his hand. Don't. Vale stared at him. Why? Mercer looked at the approaching machine. Because weapons won't stop it. What will? Mercer watched the ancient human ships powering down one by one. Then he smiled. For the first time since the war began, he looked completely confident. We're going to do what humans do best. Vale frowned. And what's that? Mercer answered. Lie. Behind the enemy, millions of dormant stars suddenly ignited. Humanity had one final plan. And it required the entire galaxy to believe a lie. Mercer gave the order. Tell the galaxy Earth is dead. Vale stared at him. What? Every human colony. Every Veer station. Every surviving fleet. Broadcast one message. Mercer looked toward the approaching artificial world. Humanity has been destroyed. Vale understood nothing. You want the enemy to believe we've lost? Mercer nodded. It doesn't hunt civilizations. He pointed toward the stars. It hunts civilizations that are known. The Veer historian suddenly understood. The entity follows information. Exactly. Humanity had spent 4 centuries erasing its existence. Now it would erase itself again. But this time, humanity wasn't doing it alone. The Veer fleet transmitted the message. Across the galaxy, human colonies shut down. Ships powered off. Planetary networks disappeared. Even artificial intelligence systems were ordered to delete human references. Within minutes, humanity became a ghost. The enemy stopped moving. Its enormous weapons closed. The artificial world hovered silently at the edge of the solar system. Then its voice returned. Where are the humans? No one answered. The entity scanned the galaxy. Nothing. Humanity was gone. But Mercer knew the lie had to be perfect. He ordered every remaining human ship to destroy its own identification systems. Names disappeared from hulls. Military records vanished. Navigation databases were wiped. The final human transmission was sent into deep space. Then silence. For 12 minutes, nothing happened. Then the enemy turned away. Vale whispered, it worked. Mercer didn't smile. Not yet. The entity suddenly stopped. A tiny signal appeared. One human ship had failed to disappear. A damaged scout vessel. Its location was exposed. The artificial planet immediately turned toward it. Thousands of weapons opened. Mercer watched helplessly. The scout ship had only seconds. Then something unexpected happened. The Veer fleet moved. Vale ordered every Veer warship to surround the human vessel. Mercer shouted, you'll expose yourselves. Vale answered calmly. Then we disappear together. The Veer fleet powered down every system. Millions of ships became silent. The entity scanned them. Nothing. It couldn't understand. The Veer had willingly erased themselves alongside humanity. Then the Hollow fleet joined them. One by one, every civilization that had survived the ancient enemy shut down its communications. Across the galaxy, billions of worlds went dark. The entity searched. Found nothing. For the first time in thousands of years, it became confused. Then the artificial planet began collapsing. The gate behind it started closing. Mercer watched the darkness consume the enemy. But before the gate disappeared, the entity sent one final message. Not to humanity. To the entire galaxy. You believe silence makes you invisible. The voice paused. It does not. The gate closed. Everyone remained silent. Vale turned toward Mercer. Did we win? Mercer looked at the dead stars. No. Then what did we accomplish? Mercer slowly smiled. We bought ourselves time. Behind them, deep inside Earth's hidden archives, a single forgotten file opened by itself. Its title appeared. War 2, status, not started. And beneath it was one final line. The enemy is already inside. The file opened. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the lights beneath Antarctica turned red. Admiral Mercer stared at the screen. War 2, status, not started. Below it appeared a date. Beginning, 17 minutes ago. Mercer felt the blood drain from his face. The enemy had never been outside the gate. It had already crossed over. A warning appeared. Infiltration detected. Then every human ship received the same signal. Not from space. From inside their own systems. The Veer commander looked at Mercer. It's here. Mercer nodded. But where? A human engineer suddenly screamed. Admiral. Every scream changed. The entity had not invaded a planet. It had invaded something much more dangerous. Memory. Across human archives, Veer databases, and hollow records, entire sections began changing. History was rewriting itself. The First World War disappeared. Then the Second. Then humanity's first journey into space. Then the Veer Dominion itself vanished from its own historical records. Vale stared at the screen. I don't remember conquering Earth. Mercer looked at him. You never did. Vale froze. For one terrifying moment, even Mercer couldn't remember the invasion. The entity was erasing reality through information. And humanity finally understood why it had feared this enemy for 4 centuries. You couldn't fight something if you couldn't remember that it existed. Mercer closed his eyes. Then he smiled. Good. Vale stared at him. Good. Mercer pointed toward the oldest human warship. Because we still have one thing it can't erase. What? People. Mercer ordered every surviving soldier to speak. Not through networks. Not through computers. Through direct human voices. Across ships, soldiers began telling stories. Parents. Children. Lost cities. Old wars. Names of dead friends. Humanity's history was recreated from memory. The Veer joined them. Then the hollow. Billions of voices filled the darkness. The entity tried to erase them. But every time one memory disappeared, another civilization remembered it. Every time one name vanished, thousands repeated it. The entity had expected history to exist inside machines. It had never understood humanity's greatest archive. Human memory. The gate began collapsing. The artificial world screamed. Its voice echoed across the galaxy. You cannot remember everything. Mercer looked toward Earth. No. He smiled. But we don't have to. The ancient human weapon activated one final time. Instead of firing outward, it transmitted one message across the galaxy. Remember US. Every civilization answered. One voice became millions. Millions became billions. And the entity disappeared. Years later, the galaxy rebuilt its history. The chapter once called The Silence received a new name. The war nobody wrote down. Humanity finally revealed why it had hidden the truth. Not because humans feared the galaxy. Because they understood that sometimes survival means becoming invisible. But when the darkness came looking for them again, humanity discovered something even more powerful than invisibility. A story remembered by billions can never truly be erased. And beneath the final historical record, humanity left 4 words. We were here. Remember.